The Pentalobe security screw, or Pentalobe screw drive, is a 5-pointed tamper-resistant system primarily used by Apple and its products. Pentalobe screws have been used by Apple since 2009, when they were first implemented in the 15-inch MacBook Pro. They have since been used on other MacBook Pro, MacBook Air and iPhone models. Apple attracted criticism upon the introduction of the Pentalobe screw. It was seen as an attempt to lock individuals out of their devices. Pentalobe screw sizes include TS1, TS4, and TS5. The TS designation is ambiguous as it is also used for the TORQ set screw drive. Usage MacBook Pro The first Apple product to include Pentalobe screws internally was the mid-2009 MacBook Pro 15-inch model. 3 Pentalobe screws were used to attach the battery to the internal frame. A 1.5 mm flat blade screwdriver could easily remove these screws, which were originally mistaken for 5-point Torx screws. This was the only internal usage of Pentalobe screws. All following MacBook Pros use the tri-wing security bit to attach the battery to the internal frame. Pentalobe screws reappeared in the mid-2012 version of the MacBook Pro. 8 3mm and 2 2.3mm Pentalobe screws were used externally to attach the bottom plate of the case to the internal frame. The late 2012 version of the 13-inch MacBook Pro was the first 13-inch model to have Pentalobe screws. Several were used externally in a similar fashion to the 15-inch mid-2012 MacBook Pro. None of the 3 17-inch models of the MacBook Pro have used any Pentalobe screws. MacBook Air The MacBook Air has seen more extensive use of Pentalobe screws than the MacBook Pro. All 5 versions of the 11-inch MacBook Air include 8 2.5 mm long and 2 8 mm long external Pentalobe screws. The last 5 versions of the 13-inch MacBook Air use 8 2.6 mm long and 2 9 mm long Pentalobe screws. Pentalobe screws have only been used externally on MacBook Air models. Third-party manufacturers have marketed a variety of 5-point screwdrivers that fit Pentalobe screws on MacBook models since Pentalobe screws first appeared externally in the late 2010 MacBook Air. iPhones The original iPhone had no screws holding the body together. The iPhone 3G and the iPhone 3GS had 2 number 00 Phillips screw next to the 30-pin dock connector. Pentalobe screws were first used in the iPhone 4. At first, number 00 Phillips screws were used. However, many iPhone 4 models now have Pentalobe screws. The screws used are slightly smaller than a Torx TS1, about 0.8 mm. If brought into an Apple store for repair, iPhone 4 models with number 00 Phillips screws, if any, are replaced with 0.8 mm Pentalobe screws. Third-party manufacturers rushed to produce screwdrivers that would remove 0.8 mm Pentalobe screws after the iPhone 4's release in June 2010. These inexpensive, easily purchased drivers will remove Pentalobe screws quite easily. Many are sold as kits containing a 5-point driver and Phillips number 00 screws, in order to replace Pentalobe screws with easily removable Phillips screws. Most other security screwdrivers will strip the miniature heads, effectively locking the user out of their device. All iPhone 4S models contain identical Pentalobe screws to those found on the iPhone 4. The iPhone 5 has very similar 0.8 mm Pentalobe screws, but the screws have longer 3.6 mm shafts. Sizes and measurements although there is no official standard naming scheme. The size is commonly known as P sizes. TS sizes are sometimes used, but leave room for mixing up with regular Torx sizes. Many sources are using the wrong scheme. The following P and TS sizes are used by iFergsit.com, and PL sizes by ALll, a German tool company. References